Welcome into the Spiritual Evolution Podcast. And today I'm going to be going over how do we find Christ in our daily lives. I feel like today, in the online community of esotericism and the secrets of antiquity being distributed out onto YouTube, people talking about meta modern Christianity, going in many different directions that I think are very philosophically interesting, but they're not really getting to the crux of the matter of how do we actually live our lives with Christ? How can we live with Christ and have Christ as part of our daily lives practically in the world today? So I am going to attempt humbly to describe some methods as to how we can accomplish this goal. And much of what I'm going to say comes from the works of Rudolf Steiner, which, of course, as we know, is objective. And it was given to him by the great spiritual guides of the earth. And as Steiner says, the only way we can get to the truth is to test these concepts and revelations of spiritual science or of anything in our daily lives and see if it is indeed true for us. This is how we can keep the movement of anthroposophy and spiritual science alive and how it can become non-dogmatic. So first of all, what needs to be addressed is the time we're living in. We're living in a time where materialism is at its peak, the peak, I would say, of the history of the whole world. And yes, Atlantis, of course, had some of these technologies, as many have covered, but they also had an ancient clairvoyance, which allowed them to experience the spiritual world as an objective fact. And we have dove so far down into materialism, into sub-nature, that we have lost access to supranature. And this is why we need spiritual scientific concepts and study as the antidote to this. Now, for example, the way we educate children in today's day and age, um, according to Rudolf Steiner, it actually weakens the willpower of all of us because the way that we're educated is not correct. We learn too early how to read. When things are forced upon the child in this way of making them do certain tasks and things that actually are not in accordance with the karmic understanding of the spiritual world and of history, then this weak willpower can be the result. And according to Rudolf Steiner, materialism can only last for 2 generations before the succeeding generations begin to have anxiety, fear, weakness of will. And so we're past that point now. And this can be the case of a lot of people. I believe that I had fallen prey to this exact thing. And not exactly, I'm blessed to say that spiritual science saved my life and that Christ has saved my life as well, and that I continue to work with him every day, and that's why I'm making this video. And there's some people in life that even with their job, for example, they don't really know how they got there. They don't really know how they got to be doing the work that they're doing today. And, they were sort of pushed in that direction, almost by chance, almost by a weakness of will. And really, when we're doing tasks and things in a work environment that we don't align with or that we're not passionate about, this really can be an issue in today's day and age. And so we at least have to cultivate something on the side or something that is a passion project that we can do as a gift to the world, and something that is really helping other people. So first of all, to cultivate spiritual science in our daily lives, there are many exercises and states of mind that are addressed by Rudolf Steiner in some books that he's written. Knowledge of Higher Worlds and Its Attainment, Theosophy, specifically The Path to Knowledge, which is chapter 4, and you can find that online as well on YouTube. Just type in Rudolf Steiner, The Path to Knowledge. Highly recommend that for beginners. The Way of Self-Knowledge is another book that I think is really interesting, which actually puts you in the perspective of Rudolf Steiner's direct experiences. And he also has written Occult Science, and of course, his prime gift to the world, according to him, Philosophy of Freedom. So these books, they consist in telling you that we need to cultivate devotion in our thoughts, in our feeling, to have a reverence and a love and respect of others without criticism for others or our society, which is very difficult nowadays, very difficult. To live in an eternal mindset and to follow the laws of the spiritual world in the fullest freedom that we can. Not, again, not a dogma, not something that's telling you what to do. If you come across any occult teachings or spiritual teachings that are interfering with your willpower, that is incorrect. This is all done out of full freedom. And this is not me, obviously, telling you what to do. This is just from the objective spiritual world. It's more of a logic or a geometric. If you think of geometry, there's laws. There's laws in physics. These are the laws that have really been put here by the spiritual world as sort of an archetype of the spiritual world. And so, actually a good thing for beginners is to study geometry or to study logic or philosophy. People like Hegel, of course, Rudolf Steiner's Philosophy of Freedom. Logic itself is taken basically from the law of the spirit. So if we live within those laws, we actually do it not out of a forceful nature, but something that we take out of the spiritual world and then recapitulate it out, not in a free way. In a free way. That's full freedom. I also recommend studying the 6 essential exercises, specifically pages 98 through 120 in the book Start Now, a book of soul and spiritual exercises put together by Christopher Bamford. That book is called Start Now. There's a video also on my channel that reads a portion of this section of the 6 exercises. It gives you the full 6 exercises. There are different versions of it. There's a version that's in occult science. There's also a version talking about the chakras, which is part of that. So it's not all just the exercises. It's actually talking about how to cultivate the chakras as well, which is similar. But it's part of that recommendation that I make for beginners. For people who may not know spiritual science, and they may be a beginner, and this is really the path that you should go down in some of these suggestions. So now we can get into it. Rudolf Steiner, in his Philosophy of Freedom, he says, "For the universe as a whole, my feelings can be of no value, only if, as percepts of myself, they enter into connection with a concept, and this, in a roundabout way, becomes links in the cosmos." I'll let you sit with that one. You can rewind it. It's profound, I think. And he then, in a lecture series in Michael's Mission, says, quote, "When we make our way through the world with an awareness that together with everything we see, everything we hear, there is soul and there is spirit flowing into us. And with the awareness that at the same time soul is flowing from us out into the world, then we shall have gained the awareness needed by humankind for the future." This is the new yoga. It's the Michael yoga, and it's actually the yoga that we must cultivate in today's day and age. We have moved past the yoga of focusing on the breath and mindfulness type of exercises. We've moved past that. Those can be good in certain situations, but they're not necessarily good for constant living. And we've moved past that in our conscious evolution. So how can we connect these two quotes? How does it relate to the Christ? At first, he's saying for us personally, for our personal ego, our feelings don't matter, but they do matter for the cosmos and for things around us. So, what I believe Steiner is trying to say, this might be my interpretation, but it's that our true spirit and consciousness is actually outside of us. And so, um, it's kind of like the microcosm. We are the microcosm of the macrocosm. And to find our true self, we must connect our soul with the spirit and the soul of the world. Okay. So, what I will say is that um, when we can have devotion and love and interest in everyone and everything around us, to know the spiritual concepts behind them, our perceptions are then transformed into conceptions of objective spiritual reality that then streams into us. And this is a sort of circular motion, if you think of it that way. Um, and by this, in this circular motion, we then can have moral feelings, moral intuition, inspiration, and imagination. So Steiner speaks how our apathy, okay, apathy, or what that means is lack of interest. It's a major issue in today's world, which is why people are taking less interest in spiritual things. So apathy, it deadens our emotions and leads to weakness of willpower. And then we have another issue, which is obstinance. And that is the attitude of mind that insists inflexibly upon one thing or another. This is also categorized as lack of attentiveness, or can lead to this quality. And this also weakens the willpower. So this is basically when we're thrown hither and thither. This is basically when we are thrown hither and thither, and the world sort of takes us over. We are lost in the world. And for one thing or another, basically things happen, we lose our mind or we get angry, we get mad. And when we avoid obstinance, we improve our emotions and we strengthen our willpower. And in this way, we must strive for interest and attentiveness. And when we overcome our impulses to not care or to feel attacked by one viewpoint or the other in an inflexible way, or we are more flexible to life, to things happening at work, with family. We just become more flexible when we're traveling, all these types of things, right? Where we need to be flexible. Maybe we have to sleep on a couch, right? And we're kind of in fear of that. We don't want to get a bad night's sleep, something like that, right? Where we have to just we have to be in a constant state of flexibility to life. And if we do this, we become stronger in facing life. When we have thoughts that do not relate to the outer world, or maybe aren't logical, or maybe are intrusive in nature, the key is to not let it grab you, not to let that thought become an emotion or even an action of will. And we really all have this issue. And sometimes they will say this is like an OCD type thing. Um, what maybe supposedly is classified as that. I don't really believe in the modern day psychology classification because I think it just makes it worse for people to be thinking that they have this problem, that they are the problem. I think we all have the capability to get behind those problems and to work with Christ. And that's what I'm about to talk about. And what they can do really is when they're having the intrusive thought to just allow that to be without having a feeling or an impulsive will around it. And it takes an immense amount of strength. But the way that we do it is through Christ. And that's how I'm going to explain the next portion here. Christ is truly the middle way. He is the balance between those intrusive thoughts or will of the wisps thoughts or thoughts about our own interests and then he's a balance between that and then the impulses we have in our will that may be related to immoral actions or things of this nature. So Christ sits in between them in our center, physically, in our heart center, in the middle layer of our consciousness. And that's kind of why people talk about Christ being the middle way, Buddha being the middle way, the balance, right, that the Buddha had found. That Buddha is really the original Christian, if we think about it. He's a guy of compassion and love, and he was able to get to that center, right? He was really the first one to tap into this Christ consciousness of the middle way. Okay, so and in this way, if Christ can take hold of this middle layer of our being, our feeling center, the will impulse cannot pass up into thought, and the thought cannot pass into will. And so when we can cultivate this heart center through the Michaelic vision that I discussed earlier, the Michael will, the new yoga that I discussed earlier, where we allow the spirit and the soul to flow into us through our interest and understanding of the outer world, and we stream out with devotion and love, we are working with Christ through our center. Not a single thought can harm us or deter us from keeping our feeling center calm and loving. Not a single will impulse can influence us. We can look at them objectively through Christ's love and compassion and transform them into higher will impulses and higher desires and higher thoughts through moral imagination, inspiration, and intuition. So this is a battle that Christ has already won, and we can tap into that victory ourselves. This can then create the heart thinking with the help of Michael and Christ. We can be the balance, and our thoughts can come upward from the balance, not from our heads downward, but from the heart center upward. And this balance, it comes from being objective about ourselves and subjective about the world. And the more unique concepts I can have as an individual in the world, the more rich an experience I can have. But these concepts are created from the outer world, not from our own pains, sorrows, desires, or personal interests. But what we have to know is that Christ has infinite understanding in this situation. He understands your problems and your issues. You can give them to him literally. Through the feeling center, he will transform those problems. So you can focus on the outer world. Christ has your back on the inner world. He understands the struggles of today, and he understands that humanity is really right now being destroyed in many ways, but he wants to help. Okay, so through spiritual science and studying the deeper truths of our existence and having the Michaelic will, the Michaelic yoga, the new yoga will, we can truly heal ourselves in this life. Thank you.